which means State University of New York, the Franconia campus. She is the Dean of College of Education now. Her expertise is a special education, and she is the area of her study, research, and teaching is related to the area of education of students with emotional behavior disorder and learning disability. And she tries to use the technology to facilitate the learning of students with disability, with gifts and talents, or at risk for academic failure. And we believe she is a very good teacher, instructor, and speaker. So we are very happy today to invite her to deliver this on stage to you. Please be attentive and be responsive. If she has any interaction with you, be ready and speak out. Okay? Yeah, I believe you because you are our 8 students. Wonderful, right? Yes. Okay, so let's see. Dr. Give her a very big hand.
Well, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm very honored to talk to you today and hopefully to have an interactive conversation with you. I know you have a variety of majors. The undergraduates are English and some graduate students in communication. How many graduate students? All right. And so I'm very happy to be here with you. And I thought it would be interesting for you, since you are interested in language, in English, for me to share with you my expertise, my experience in working with students who have special needs and who are also have a language, their primary language is other than English. And so as a teacher, how do you create a classroom environment that is supportive of their learning and their language acquisition? A little bit of a challenge. So, what I'm most passionate about in the United States is bilingual special education. And bilingual meaning English and whatever the native language is. And special education is specially designed instruction to support the learning of the student. So for instance, if a student has an emotional problem, a real severe emotional problem, they get angry very quickly and they blow up. I worked with teenagers who had emotional problems, who really couldn't function in a regular school, so they came to a day school. So not only are you trying to assist them in learning how to behave appropriately and to focus on learning, but you also have to bridge that language difference. So you have to be very creative, you have to be very sensitive to the student's needs, and you also have to have at least one other person that knows the home language, the primary language. Because there are so many languages, when I taught in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, there are so many other languages that you can't begin to know all of the languages. Like when I went to school, junior high and high school, I took 4 years of Latin, and then I took 4 years of Russian. But when I went into my classroom to teach, I might have Spanish. Students who spoke Spanish is their primary language, their L1, their language, their first language, or it might be Lebanese, whatever, Chinese. So you had to be able to figure out who in the class could be that bridge of connecting the home language with English. Okay. All right. otherwise I'm going to start dancing. Okay, so when you think about what are the different areas of concern when you're a teacher, it would be regular education is a typical classroom. If you're in high school, if you're teaching history, so that's the curriculum, the core curriculum. And then the special education is how you customize or individualize teaching instruction so that the student can learn. And then the bilingual education is how you make the language connection, make examples from the L1, the primary language, so that the student understands what you're saying. So it's very, very simple things. One of the things that you have to do is when you introduce new vocabulary, you have to make sure that you spend time doing concept development, giving examples of what the word means, especially if it's abstract, like freedom or I don't know, let's see, what other abstract word would it be? What's another concept like freedom? Something that's not concrete. Yes, here. Happiness. What else? Especially with emotionally disturbed adolescents. What else? What's another abstract word that you have to really take some time and explain if someone's primary language wasn't English? Self-esteem. Yes. So you get the idea? Yes? Okay. All right. And then another thing that we would do in the classroom is to have visuals, pictures of main concepts, so that the students can connect the word they use in their L1, their primary language, with the word in English. And then the other thing is it's got to be interesting. The language has got to be interesting. You can't be boring. So you've got to make it interesting. So maybe you sing about the concept. Maybe you have them write a poem about it. Maybe you have them act out the words so that they really deeply understand what that concept is. And then the other thing that I think really helps when you're working with students who are bilingual or who you want to be bilingual, to be fluent in both languages, is cooperative learning and peer tutoring. Now, why do you think that would be? Why is cooperative learning good if you're learning another language and you're trying to learn in another language? Why do you think? Be brave. Yes. Yes. So you're practicing, right? You're practicing. And the other thing as a teacher, what you find is sometimes peer-to-peer or student-to-student, they explain better than a teacher-to-student. Any other thing that you can think of why cooperative learning would be good for bilingual practice? All right. Also, a teacher must use the native language, especially when students are the word floundering, when they're struggling, when they quite don't know what's going on. Well, here's what happened when I was in Los Angeles as a teacher. We had a Saturday learning school, and we had several different languages. And what we would do is to have a small group of students, 8th graders, 9th graders, junior high, that they would pick the topic they wanted to learn about. So we made it thematically based. So if they wanted to learn about basketball, or maybe design, or something like that, whatever they wanted to learn about. And when they would develop a report, or they might develop a play, or they might develop a video, whatever they wanted to do to demonstrate what they had learned about that topic. And you would have maybe 1 or 2 students who were totally non-speakers of English. We would also have students who had immigrated from Mexico, maybe 3, 4, 5 years, pretty fluent in English, still speaking what they call Spanish English, but able to make that connection to the students who are non-English speakers. And so in their learning together, they would use Spanish to explain things. And then that would help me be able to speak Spanish. Because I speak just a bit of Spanish. Lots of Russian, but just a bit of Spanish. And also use formal and informal opportunities to practice English. So using English as we go to lunch, have the students practice English, appropriate English, functional English, so that they would learn what kinds of words to use. Like when I was in mainland China and in here, I know that thank you is sisek. So I can say that very nicely. That's about it for right now. I've only been here 2 days though, and then providing feedback that the student understands. That's really important. So, what are some characteristics of effective native and second language instruction? First of all, you've got to make sure that as a teacher that you're looking at what are the standards or what are the learning goals for the students, so that you really take time to prepare your instruction so that the students will learn what you're trying to accomplish. So if the instructional goals are to learn about American history during the Civil War. How many of you know the Civil War in American history in the middle 1800s? When we fought the North and the South part of America over slavery, to get rid of slavery, the emancipation, it's big. Even now, it's a very important part of our history. But if you're going to teach the Civil War to students that have different languages, you've got to step back and think about what is the vocabulary? What are the abstract concepts that you want to teach? What are some visuals or some pictures that you can use to demonstrate different concepts? Like when you talk about battles, do you have a video of the battles? Do you have a movie of the Civil War that you can show a bit of? Now with YouTube, everything's available, right? When I was teaching, you had to order tapes. Now you just plug in your iPad and show YouTube. You have to think about language, the use of language that's going to be understandable to your students. Like for instance, me coming here today, it was a bit of a risk. I didn't know how much English you had, and I have no Chinese, right? I knew that you were having German guests, so I didn't know how much English they knew, and I didn't know what level you were, graduate, undergraduate, and I didn't know the nature of your curriculum. So I'm really guessing here. So I'm spending a lot of time right now looking at your faces. Are you getting it? Are you going, this lady is crazy? See, I know, so some of you got that. But you know what I mean? So if I knew more about, if I had the time to really prepare, and if I had understood better what your curriculum was, and what you are interested in studying, I could make that context a bit more sensitive to your needs. So right now I'm kind of on the fly trying to figure out, is this making sense? Is it interesting to you? Is there something else you want to know? So the other piece that I'm depending on is that you're going to ask questions or tell me if you're interested in something else. So that's why it's important to have that student interaction, getting that feedback from your students. Do they understand what you're saying? Do they understand what you intend? Do they have other interests that you need to delve into? Anyway, that's the example. So the phrase that we use in bilingual special ed is sheltering instruction. You shelter, you scaffold, you customize. Understand what I mean by that? You make it individual so that you're making those individual connections with students so that they understand. One of the most important things when you're trying to shelter the instruction is that the students have to trust you. And that they see that you're accepting, that you believe in their ability to learn, and that you're a person who can try to communicate, even if you don't know the words. You can use, you use gestures. You try to be responsive to what your students are saying and the way they're behaving in your class. And you try to maximize the opportunities for language use. So it's not just me talking. If you were in a sheltered instruction environment, you need to have the interaction, speaking, having your students speak as much as possible, which I hope we'll have an opportunity to do here after I present a few more ideas. I want to hear your questions. I want to respond to your questions and your thinking. Active participation. Then there's another important concept in sheltered instruction, and that's having students take responsibility for their own learning. Students have to actively engage in making those connections. You can't just passively pour language over top of a student and it absorbs into their brain. You know that doesn't work that way. Think of an example of when you feel you learn best. When you're in the middle of your study, what kind of activity helps you to really internalize, to really absorb, to make those connections in your learning? Is it sitting and reading a book, or what? How do you like to learn?
Play games.
Play games. Okay, so playing a game. What else? Yes. Watch videos. So not just reading the text, but actually seeing visual. Yes. What else? How about if you have to memorize a lot of items, a lot of concepts? And you know that on a test that the professor is going to ask you to write 5 ideas about something and describe them. How do you memorize that?
Try to make it reasonable, making a story or poem something.
Yes. So you develop what they call a mnemonic. You connect it to a word, a poem, letters, and each letter sign for an idea. Correct. So you're actively engaging and making meaning from those, and that helps you memorize. Great answers. Cooperative learning. Oh, so this is another important thing. Oftentimes teachers want to just tell you everything. What's really interesting for students and really important, especially for students who are learning a language, is to actually investigate for themselves. So to give a problem, some kind of a problem, like a science experiment. If you take like vinegar, a container of vinegar, and put baking soda in it. Is that what? Baking soda, and then it bubbles. And then ask students, why do you think that liquid's having that chemical reaction? And just give them that question, and let them go look at Google. Let them investigate using Google and YouTube, and see what they come up with. Give them books about it. Anymore it's electronic databases. I know at home when my husband has a question, he goes into Google search and he goes, why does the whole question out? And he goes, it's giving me the answer. But anyway, getting actively involved in figuring out why something happens is really important for students that are learning language. And then the other thing is, something I mentioned before, is thematic-based learning. Rather than just history or English or math, if you say, if you pose a relevant question that uses all of those skills, students learn more deeply. And it helps them to develop their critical thinking. So we're almost at the end of my discussion. Just so that you know, when I'm trying to teach or I'm doing research in this area, we know that in order for students of other languages to succeed in English, and especially students with disabilities or have special learning needs, they really need to have an advanced level of English to really succeed, to really be successful. And so while you're teaching the content, you also have to support the language proficiency and make those connections back to the primary language. In the United States, we now call that language-sensitive response to intervention. So language-sensitive RTI. That's a big concept in America now, like just that wraparound instruction that's sensitive to the needs of each student. And especially in urban areas in America, you have many, many children who are first-generation immigrants from many, many different countries. And that's New York City, Chicago, San Francisco, Los Angeles, the big urban areas. But what we're finding more and more in America is that even in small rural areas, there's an influx of children and families from other countries that have English language learning needs. And so we really do have to develop this whole process of how we do bilingual education. And what we find is that, children from all over the world, they don't think anything differently. That's what I love about kids because, they come into a new environment, they don't know what's going on. It's like, what's this? How do you say this? What about this? And so we find that the younger children can develop that second language very quickly, very quickly. And it's the older children and us, adults, that have the problem. And it's because we're not curious the way we are when we're little. When you're little, it's just everything's a question. Why is the sky blue? Why does the sun shine? Why do I have to go to sleep? Why can't I stay up? All those questions. And then we put them in school and we go, no, it's not time to ask a question now. Be quiet. Listen to me. Later. Right? So one of the things that I always tell our teachers is, don't stifle, don't squelch, don't stomp on children's questions. That's the fire for learning. It's the passion for learning. You want to keep that going. So even though the experts in language development say it takes 1 to 3 years for the functional language to develop, and then 5 to 7 years for academic language to develop, I would like to propose that it depends on the learning environment. You can speed up the acquiring or the acquisition of advanced language if you have a learning environment that's exciting, that is rich in language, and provides students with opportunities to just be totally engaged in making that bridge back and forth between L1 or language 1 and language 2. So, depending on the personality of the student, how carefully the teacher can structure the environment, how actively engaged the teacher can make the environment, children, both just typical children and children with learning disabilities can learn that language and learn much more quickly than 5 to 7 years. Next one. Oh, I kind of covered all this. So that's it. my main idea is, actually this is a whole course, a whole semester course, so I just picked a few slides that I thought you might be interested in. So now tell me what you'd like to talk about. What are you interested in? Yes, sir.
Doctor, you were mentioning about giving questions to the students will make them learn more quickly and more easier.
Yes.
What if the answer they got, after their own thought, their process of thinking, what if the answer was quite not the right concept of the original idea? Isn't it going to be more difficult to change the concept into, because as a second language, it's very hard to explain all those ideas.
Yes.
So isn't it going to be so difficult to make the concept really?
So that's a really wonderful question, and I think that is a skill that a good teacher will learn, of how to negotiate between answers that may not be well developed or might have a wrong idea in them. And so what you do at that point is you pose another question that has other students explaining the more correct, the connection. So let's see if I can give an example. So if you're talking about photosynthesis and a student who has another language other than English, and they suggest a response that's not quite right, and they don't talk about sunlight as being important for photosynthesis, or chlorophyll. If the chlorophyll is the green substance in the plant that absorbs the sunlight for photosynthesis. So then what you do is you involve the other students in explaining those other details. And then you step back and then you ask the question, so let's make a sketch of what we've talked about. So in that way, you're stepping back, you're looking at the nature of the misunderstanding and providing additional questions and information so that the students can actually make sense and develop a more accurate understanding of that concept together. So again, it's the teacher as facilitator of knowledge and not just the teller of the correct answer. Because, and just to carry that forward a bit, that idea, how much in life, as you get older, you see that, is not just yet right or wrong, true or false. Most problems require that you do collective thinking together and that there are possible options for solutions. And sometimes you have to really push on one or more solutions, and there are advantages and disadvantages of each of the solutions. That's much more sophisticated than just yes or no, correct or incorrect. What else would you like to know about? Or questions do you have? Or ideas that kind of where you went, aha. Any ahas? Aha. Yes.
Yes, I want to ask, how do you think about it? Situation or environment in ESL learning?
Yes, I want to ask about how do you think about it? ESL learning education in Taiwan cramps for education. Yeah, because I'm facing a kind of problem and just kind of obstacles, and it's hard to going forward. Yeah.
Are you asking? So English is a second language,
Yes.
and you getting a job in that area,
Yes.
and if you're having a difficult time in Taiwan to obtain a position.
Yes.
Well, I guess I would say, I know that around the world, there's a huge market for ESL instructors. So if you're proficient in English, you shouldn't have a problem. If you have the certificate, if you have the advanced degree, you shouldn't have a problem. She wants to answer. No, I'm not.
going to answer, I just want to clarify his question.
Oh.
He is not teaching in language institute for kids and teenagers and adults. So he has already encountered a lot of difficulties in instruction and also how to probably motivate students to learn or to increase their language proficiency on different levels. So,
Especially, yes,
No, okay.
especially in a whole English environment.
The whole English environment.
Yeah, they're hard to figure out things. And especially when I'm teaching reading comprehension, reading comprehension. Yeah.
Yes.
And it's hard to use just only in English. Yeah, and
See, that's why, I really do think that being able to make the bridge in the native language so that they have the concept in English as well as their native language is important. But for the reading comprehension, when you're trying to teach English, I think the more functional that you can be in providing them feedback, making examples, and also ongoing monitoring and assessment of their understanding. And make the topics be interesting to them. What are they interested in? Like when I taught adolescents, teenagers, I had students who couldn't read very well. Their oral fluency, not just comprehension, but oral fluency. So if I had a student who was interested in cars, building cars, I would go to the garage, the automobile garage, and ask for an old car manual. And bring the car manual and have the student read the car manual because they were interested in that. And it was kind of a strange idea, but it really helped them develop their oral proficiency and comprehension, because in learning about how you fix cars, the motor, whatever, they had to really read and be engaged in more technical vocabulary. But you do have to, the motivation is very important. You really have to find what their interests are, whether the children or the parents. You have to figure out ways to motivate parents to continue to practice with their children. If you're in the home, doing home instruction, you've got to be creative. There's not a book. And looking at what makes sense. Where do you get a spark of interest as you're developing some, and really make it authentic, real. That would be my suggestion. But it isn't easy. It's a very challenging career. What else? So why are you studying English? English is what? Why is it important, do you think?
It's a world language. I think people in every country will learn English.
Yes. But I think I say this to American students. There are more people in the world that speak Mandarin than English. So it's really important that we learn Mandarin, that we learn Chinese as well, and other languages. So one of the reasons that SUNY Fredonia administrators came to Asia and to China, came here to Taiwan, was because we want to have more student study abroad. We want our students to come here and study and learn from you. We want you to come to our SUNY Fredonia and learn about our culture and languages.
I think in Taiwan, in our education, we learn English, reading and writing skills, but our speaking and listening skills is not very good, and we are afraid about speaking English. So, how to?
So, and I say, you all are inspirations to us because we don't know Chinese except for Say. So we need to practice that as well. But for your functional English, do you watch TV?
Yes.
What American TV shows do you watch?
Movies.
Movies. What kind of movies?
All the movies.
All the movies. Talk shows? What talk shows do you like? Which ones are shown here in Taiwan?
TED. We will watch TED in several times.
What is it?
TED. T.
Oh, TED Talks. Oh, you know, aren't those wonderful? I love TED Talks. It's great. I know. I get my email in and I get like 2 or 3 TED Talks every week and it's like, oh, I can't wait to go home and watch my TED Talk. I also give my students TED Talks to watch too. What other do you watch entertainment? Any other entertainment?
Voice.
What?
Voice.
The Voice, oh I know. Well then you've got, see, I guess I would say that if you want to learn to speak, functional English, informal functional English, what I would call street language, The Voice is great. Adam and Christina Aguilera. Oh, I love The Voice. And who else? Who else is on it? Who's another coach? Huh? Yeah, CeeLo. Isn't he something else? Who else? Usher. Shakira. Yes. So now, in that, just listening to the dialogue back and forth and having them interview the auditions and practicing the music, and I think all of those things will help you become more fluent in your thinking of everyday English. But don't worry too much. You're already doing a wonderful job, and I think as you immerse yourself in the culture and in the everyday language, you'll learn it more and more. And it's always nice. I know one of my best friends in Los Angeles, colleague, Dr. Christina Kim, when she had studied at University of Minnesota, she's from South Korea, grew up in South Korea, and then studied at University of Minnesota for her doctorate, and came to America. We both got tenure track positions, faculty positions at California State University, Los Angeles, and we roomed together. Our office was together. And so many times she would say to me, so Chris, what does it mean when someone says da 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 da, like an idiom? And so then I would say, well, let's see, how do I explain this? And so she learned the semantic nuance of or the idiom, what it actually meant. We would talk about it. And then I would ask her, when you have a Korean student that comes in and they go, what does that mean? And why did you get mad at her? Because she talked in the familiar with you. So all of those different cultural language things, you can learn from each other. You just have to be like a little child and ask questions. And don't be afraid of it. Be bold. Anything else? Yes.
Hello. Thank you for your speech. And I would like to ask, what's your experience in learning foreign languages? And why do you want to learn foreign languages? And how many languages do you learn? This is my question. Thank you.
Thank you. So I took 4 years of Latin, but Latin is not a live language; it's a dead language. In other words, you can learn to read it and translate it. My family was Catholic, and so when I was little, the religious service, which we call a mass, was in Latin, and so I memorized 45 minutes of Latin, and that was in second grade. In order to make your first communion, it's like the first ritual that you engaged in when you're a Catholic. And I thought, I don't want to spend every Sunday going to church and not knowing what I'm saying. So I started Latin when I was in 6th grade. And then it was interesting because I got to translate some of the great classics. Hannibal Crosses the Alps by Cicero. Many classics I read and I translated. But after about 3 years, it's like, oh, this is boring. You know, I got tired of it. So that's when I took Russian. So you got to piшу и читаю по-русски. Ничего. Just a little. But I took Russian because we had a good Russian teacher in our high school. And I wanted to learn, I wanted to learn from a good teacher. Yes?
I majored in Russian.
Did you really? Oh. That's great. Well, then you know, it's a beautiful language.
Hard language.
Yes. Yes, different alphabet. But great. You know, and when I was able to start reading Russian literature in Russian, reading Dostoevsky in Russian is amazing. It really is. It's a very powerful language, as I'm sure Mandarin is. So that's my next, that's why I'm here. This is my first take. I'm going to go back and get this episode and start to learn Mandarin. No, I do have, one of my faculty members in the College of Education is from Chengdu. And she promised me when I came back she would start teaching me Mandarin. So I'm looking forward to that. I don't want to be a hypocrite, I want to practice what I preach. I think it's important for everyone to have at least 2 languages, if not more. I wish I had 4 languages. I have a friend who actually is fluent in 4 languages. She's from Venezuela, so she's fluent in Spanish. She's got elegant English. She writes in research journals in English. She's fluent in French, and she's fluent in Italian. I'm so jealous. She reads, she writes, she speaks just beautifully. She thinks deeply in all those languages. I'm inspired by her. I think it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, especially if you can't go to the countries. She has been able to travel to the countries. And when you immerse yourself in that country, I think you learn all the nuanced meanings in the language, and that's important. That's why study abroad is so important for you all. Anything else? Well, thank you. Thank you so much for your attention and your great questions. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bittner, and thank you all for attention and also your good questions and interaction. I believe Dr. Bittner has a very impressive ideas or concept of our students. I hope so. Okay, they are really energetic. And I'm not saying that for myself, but I'm saying that for the department. We will have a photo taking with all the students, right? Yes. 同学，我们一起拍个合照，你就坐这边。